The video game industry has just been permanently changed. Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard for $69 billion has completely altered the landscape. We are now in the age of acquisitions. Everybody is going to be spending every spare penny trying to buy exclusives. Sony, Microsoft, Embracer Group, Tencent, third-party publishers, first-party publishers. Everybody is going to be trying to climb their way to the top of the money pile by spending the most money. But with the buying of Activision Blizzard, people are starting to wonder, okay, how is Sony going to get revenge? What is it that PlayStation could buy that would even compare to the completely insane scope of Call of Duty and King and freaking World of Warcraft? Let's talk about the idea of who they're going to grab. All right, let's do that. What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here. Hi, hope you're having a great day. If you could like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. So, we're going to be taking a look at a lot of different tweets today and taking a look at a big article by Paul Tassi. But I want to start things off with this tweet he dropped yesterday. I bet Sony pulls the trigger on Square Enix or FromSoft. Now, to me, I do think these are probably the safest bets. It does seem like, in general, PlayStation obviously loves to work with Square Enix, and they have had some pretty good partnerships with FromSoft in the past. And if they were able to make all future Dark Souls games exclusive to the PlayStation, get Bloodborne 2 exclusively on the PlayStation 5, that would definitely sell a bunch of consoles. But even here, the top reply is getting some pushback. What a terrible scenario that would be. We should be hoping that they stay independent. Sony and Nintendo both have extremely close relationships with Square Enix. I also doubt they'd be allowed to make smaller games, which have been some of their best output. Now, Stealth here is a very big Nintendo fanboy, and I don't mean that as an insult. I'm just saying that because he is a person that very much prides himself on beating as many games as possible, both first party and third party, on the Nintendo Switch. And I think there's a lot of people like this. I think there is a lot of people that hope, even if Square Enix does get bought, hopefully we still see games like Octopath Traveler come into the Nintendo Switch. Honestly, I'm not sure they would. In my mind, if Sony ends up buying Square Enix, they're going to lock that down. They're going to make it where games only ever come out on their console, which is a bit of a mixed bag. I like playing Final Fantasy games on my PlayStation 5. FF16 definitely looks gorgeous, but Stealth is right. Those tinier projects have definitely been a fun, random surprise from Square Enix. Now, pretty much everybody agrees that if there is an acquisition to make, if there is a studio to join PlayStation Studios, Square Enix seems like the most obvious bet, simply because they have had such a long-standing partnership for this last couple years. Here is why it's difficult to compare them, though. This is the size of what Microsoft just bought. Like, actually consider that. Here is the entire rest of Xbox Game Studios. You can see here we have 343 Industries, Obsidian, Rare, we've got Ninja Theory, up here In Exile, Bethesda, man. Arcane, ZeniMax, like this is everything that Doom, Skyrim, everything is this tiny chunk. This is Halo, this is Sea of Thieves, this is freaking so much stuff. All of Activision Blizzard is humongously, it's like 2/3 of the entire company now is going to be stuff that's making Diablo 4, making Overwatch skins. Over here, King, obviously Candy Crush. And then we have just all these other subsidiaries that are working on different versions of Call of Duty, Infinity Ward, Treyarch. This is such a big buy that them buying Square Enix will be good because, obviously it's going to make it where they're going to be able to nail down more exclusive games. But if we're talking sheer manpower, Xbox just bought the farm. Xbox just made a deal so freaking big. I mean, financially, Sony can't keep up with this. Obviously, Xbox is a $2.3 trillion company. Microsoft is able to simply pay to win. But this is such a big, I genuinely believe that the nature of video games has changed. Nobody is ever going to make it in acquiring this big ever again. And people are actually making this interesting point. People are talking about Sony buying Square Enix, but this is not a comparable purchase to Activision Blizzard. Square Enix does not own Dragon Quest, they don't own Kingdom Hearts, so what they're getting if they buy them is Final Fantasy, Nier Automata, the Mana series, Secret of Mana and stuff like that, and Sony already has the new Final Fantasy games exclusively. This would not be as big of a win as obviously getting games like Call of Duty and Diablo 4 on Game Pass. That is objectively going to sell a lot of consoles. A comparable and more sensible purchase would be if they bought something like Roblox. Very weird to think about. Roblox is like that little kids game that makes, billions and billions and billions of dollars. It's like a game engine that kids can buy little tiny mini games in. I know they did like a Sonic game in it and stuff. I'm not even insulting Roblox. I'm just saying that predominantly it's marketed towards children, which has made it extremely profitable. But if you look at Sony's moves lately, it's clearly a push towards live service games, and Square Enix doesn't have a good track record outside of Final Fantasy XIV. Personally, I don't like to see big purchases like that to be made by platform holders anyways, and I hope a regulatory body stops this from becoming a mass purchasing and consolidation arms race. This is one of the biggest points that I see. Xbox fanboys get really mad when you talk about this, and I think that Sony fanboys fully don't understand the concept, but mass consolidation is taking place, and this is a bad thing. Take a step back, take your hands off the keyboard. I'm not trying to attack your favorite plastic box, but historically, big companies owning bigger chunks of the industry has always been bad. Look at streaming services, look at cable, look at all the tiny studios that are making indie films. They get bought and then just deleted. Look at Warner Brothers straight up deleting the Batgirl movie because they thought it possibly might not make enough money. That was done. That's all part of these consolidation things, is that when you actually consider the fact that major corporate stupid companies, executives that don't even like video games, are now going to be making decisions on the future of video games, I don't like the idea of that. But let me move on here. Zubitech is doing an interesting breakdown here where he talked about all the different companies that could be bought. This is essentially their price tag. So you can see Konami costs a surprisingly high amount. Konami is $7.2 billion. Square Enix right here, which obviously is the topic of the video, $5.35 billion. Koei Tecmo, Sega is relatively cheap. CD Projekt Red is practically in the discount bin. It's crazy to consider the fact that these companies can even be bought. I do think since we're talking about PlayStation, which is obviously a Japanese company, they're more inclined to buy other Japanese publishers. So I do think there is a good chance they try and scoop up something like, Bandai Namco or something like that. But the price tag is the problem. Now, I want to pull up this article here by Paul Tassi. Paul Tassi essentially said that he doesn't think that Sony should buy anybody, at least not for the typical revenge narrative going on, because this deal is just so big. While it is possible that Square Enix could get bought by Sony, this is something that could happen, but should it happen, I don't think PlayStation should bother doing any of this at all. One of the least mentioned things about this entire Activision drama is that Microsoft is in a position to make large purchases, while Sony quite literally can't. Microsoft is a $2.5 trillion company, buying a $69 billion one. That's pretty consumable, whereas Sony, they're only worth about $113 billion, which would make Activision far more than the value of the entire company. As such, Sony has stuck with lower buyouts, things like Bungie for $3.6 billion. Trying to buy a few of the biggest publishers like EA for $37 billion or Take-Two for $25 billion is again a third or a quarter of their entire value. Even something like Square Enix, $5.37 billion, isn't exactly cheap, even if it is more doable. But why? Why bother doing this? At this point, it would feel like you're just buying it so that companies like Microsoft or Amazon or whoever don't buy it first. Sony is light years ahead of the current console race. outselling Xbox 2-1 for 2 generations now, and Game Pass is not making up that gap. They have been pumping out high-quality exclusives for decades, while Xbox is only now trying to find their footing. It feels like a waste, and I'm sure that Sony will continue to pick up publishers here and there with some splashy big-name purchases, again, are not even worth 10% of the size of the Activision deal. It just doesn't seem necessary in their current market position. Now, a lot of people have been talking about the fact that this is just such a weird buy, is that I do personally believe they're going to buy Square Enix. I do think they're going to do this, but I don't think it's going to lead to higher console sales. The Activision Blizzard deal is peculiar to me because I do think it is directly going to lead to higher Xbox sales. Activision is, just such a big thing beyond just Call of Duty. It's Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, it's Crash Bandicoot, it's Spyro, it's a million tiny projects all piled into the massive Activision brand, and that's not even talking about the Blizzard branch. That is going to sell Xboxes. Square Enix is already making games exclusively on PlayStation to a heavy degree, so this is not going to be the same level of win other than the amount of crazy headlines. Media buzz, I do think if they bought Square Enix, it would be a lot of big flashy headlines. It would boost the stock value of Sony, but I don't think that in the long run it's really going to lead to a dramatically higher tier of console sales, which is what PlayStation wants. Let me actually end off with this. Here's actually the first party output for 2023. Now we have Xbox, Sony, and Nintendo. Now, Xbox, obviously so far they've gotten 3 games here. Hi-Fi Rush, which was great. Minecraft Legends, which I don't know a single person has ever played it, but it's probably cool. Redfall, which is a complete dumpster fire and one of the lowest rated games of all time. Starfield and Forza are still coming soon, whereas Sony definitely having a lighter year, especially compared to how packed 2022 was. MLB The Show, Horizon Forbidden West Burning Shores, which was perfect, Firewall Ultra, which is a PlayStation VR game, Spider-Man 2, Stellar Blade, and Helldivers 2. Now, personally, I'm extremely excited for Spider-Man 2 and Helldivers 2. Huge fans of Spider-Man 1 and Helldivers 1. Big fans. Nintendo, though, when it comes to actual exclusives, is just stomping everybody's faces. Zelda, Metroid Prime Remastered, Super Mario RPG, Super Mario Wonder, oh my god, Fire Emblem Engage, Kirby. So, my thought is just this. Buying Square Enix would be a very dramatic purchase. It would definitely get people talking, but I don't think it's going to lead to the kind of return on investment, the ROI that Sony probably hopes for. I am still nervous about the consolidation. This isn't about Sony versus Xbox. To me, I'm actually just kind of nervous about this consolidation because Xbox can pay to win. Xbox can just straight up buy everything. As long as it gets approved in court, Xbox could pretty much eat the entire industry and kill whatever they don't like. And I just don't like the idea of that. I don't like the idea of Sony buying up a bunch of stuff just to kill Xbox. I don't like the idea of Xbox just starving out Sony. To me, I want competition. I want everybody to be afraid of failure. I want companies to constantly be dogfighting to be the biggest and best developer of games that we all love to play. But I guess we're going to find out. A lot of this is speculation for stuff that's not going to happen for 10 years. But, it's fun to imagine how screwed we all are. But what do you guys think? Are you excited for the future acquisition wars? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a big old thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. And please keep dreaming. Oh man, what a day. I still cannot believe the Activision deal is just so big. If you actually look at the numbers, things have changed. And even if you don't want to admit it, I think things have changed for a way that we're going to wish we could go back to those early days of gaming when this is all done. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.